Shut up and sit down.
Hello again. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Rural Report. I am your Rural 2IC. One of the recent videos that we did put out was by tactical.com, Daniel Priestman. Should be an image right there. And I'm going to break down, because late in this article, he goes through 16 kind of topics on things that you should have. And I want to run through that. And instead of making one really long video, we'll go ahead and probably break this up into 2 parts, so that way we don't run extremely long. But since these are going to be semi-long videos anyway, let's just cut everything and jump straight into this. Water. Your body is made up more of 60% water. Go 3 days without water, you'll bite the dust. Ideally, one should prep 2 gallons of water per person per day. That is an absolute minimum. That's roughly 14 to 28 gallons of water per person in a 2-week time span. You think that's too much? Think again. You'll be using this for drinking, eating, hygiene, so that isn't overkill. And to expand on this just a little bit more, when you go through and you think about everything that you're going to need clean water for, now you're going to have to differentiate between clean water and drinking water, because those are 2 entirely different things. You do not need drinkable water to wash your clothes in and to do some hygiene things and whatnot. Now, the cleaner the water, absolutely better. But you don't have to have drinkable water for everything. But in order to have drinkable water, you're going to have to cook and brush your teeth and take some sort of a shower. You're going to have to clean utensils. You're going to use water for a lot of things. And you got to remember, the more strenuous you are, you're carrying a heavy rucksack, maybe in high heat, maybe going up some sort of train, so you're elevating, it's going against gravity. Maybe you're cutting firewood, anxiety, your heart rate speeds up. There's a lot of things that's going to make you drink a lot more water than you really think. And one of the recent videos Bear Independent put out is when disaster happens, that is the time to chug water. When you know something is going down and you are having those alarm bells go off that it is go time, that is the ideal time to start chugging that water. It's get hydrated now, so that way you are not chugging the water while you're trying to flee, and go to your bug out location or whatnot. Get as much water as you can get into you. Make sure you top everything off before you leave, but hydrate as quickly and as much as you can right when everything happens. But we'll go into water. I've released a few videos on water. Water is an ideal thing, but we're going to try and keep this a little bit shorter. So let's move on to number 2. Number 2, food. Fresh food will obviously spoil, especially if you don't have electricity to run your fridge or if you're on the road. That being said, you're going to want to store sealed, non-perishable food items. Try to find food items with a long shelf life that you can make and eat quickly without using too many resources. And really, they're going to go into MREs, or ready-to-eat meals, and freeze-dried. And that goes into learning skills on how to preserve the food. So if you're going to grow food, if you're going to hunt for food, then learning how to preserve that food. If you can learn on how to trap or how to hunt when you get some sort of food source, You're not probably going to be able to finish a deer by yourself or even with a small group in one sitting, and you don't want it to go bad. And so learning how to preserve yourself is a good idea. But look for some of the things like there's a lot of canned nuts. That's a really good source of protein. You just kind of throw them into a baggie. They have a decent shelf life. Uh, there's a lot of different things that you can go and do some research on. Sunflower seeds. There's a lot of different things out there that you can do. A lot of people go after the canned food. That seems to be the prepper go-to, is to go after canned food. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you think that you're going to stock up on 500 cans of whatever and that you can shut your door, you are in for a rude awakening on how much sodium and everything that's in there. If you try and just completely live your life off nothing but canned food, it's not going to go well, and you're going to find out real quick. So make sure that you look into other items, learn how to grow your own food, learn how to process your own food, how to preserve your own food. But again, quick overview. Let's move on to number 3, fire. Fire serves many uses and is essential to a survival situation. Matches and lighters are easy to use and carry, but they can get wet or run out of fuel. As a contingency, consider bringing along fire steels or homemade fire starters. Now, I have put out videos with JKSB, and you can go check out his Etsy store, and he's creating his own page here shortly on some homemade fire starting and different items that he has. But I agree with a ton of people out there. If you are in any survival situation, you want to have the easiest means possible on everything. So if you look at Les Stroud, who is, in my opinion, probably the godfather of survival. If you put him in a survival situation and you go, here's a fire bow and here's a big lighter, he's going to take that big lighter because he's not stupid. So you've got to make sure that you practice different fire techniques, so that way you don't go, well, I'll always have a big lighter, I'll always have matches. Well, what happens if you don't? You're going to be thankful that you learned that skill. Now, that being said, make sure that you practice with your matches and your lighter, because I have seen a ton of people in perfectly dry conditions with dry firewood and newspaper and whatever else fail at lighting or keeping a fire. So it's almost astonishing to me on how there's a lot of people that think that you just throw a match on a piece of wood and boom, you're roasting marshmallows and eating s'mores. And that is not true. So make sure that you go out and you practice. There's different leveling techniques on how to layer each of your firewood, what wood burns better, hotter, more smoke, less smoke. There's a lot of different things that go into this. And to be able to learn a lot of different things about fire, we'll do an episode on fire here in the near future. But just as an overview, fire is essential. Let's move on to the next one. Number 4, heat. Now, this goes hand in hand with the previous one of fire, because fire can provide heat, but not if you're indoors or in a car. For those scenarios, you're going to need to consider things like a space bank blanket, propane heater, sleeping bags, wool blanket. Now, when it comes to heat, there's a lot of different things on the market. There's the heat warmers that are for your hands and for your feet. Wool makes a very good kind of an insulator. There's a lot of reasons to incorporate heat. That when you're out, you need to put something between you and the earth, so that way you do not conduct heat. That's why those emergency 99-cent kind of reflective blankets are so popular. But you've got to learn other methods too of if you can put a layer between yourself and your jacket. I've seen, there's some people that will take leaves and whatnot and shove them, into the sleeves of their coat because it's another layer of insulation that pulls heat and brings it where it needs to go around the core. You need to watch your extremities. You need to watch things like your nose and your toes, things that'll get frostbite very quickly. But you also need to learn about heat in the other sense too, that if you are in a very warm climate, you need to learn how to stay out of the heat or function in the heat. So heat is a good thing and a bad thing. And we'll probably do an episode, maybe not too near future, but heat is definitely one that we'll probably get into just because of the pros and the cons. But for now, brief overview to get you thinking about heat. Let's move on to the next one. Number 5, gas. Whether you're going on the road or staying at home, gas should be on hand. Gas at home can be very useful for running a generator. Short, great points. This will be a short clip. You have to make sure that before you store gas, that you understand how to store gas properly. Gasoline is very useful, but gasoline is very dangerous. So you have to make sure that you understand the shelf life. You have to learn on how to keep it, where to keep it, what containers that you can keep it in. And there's a lot of reasons to keep it. Just because there's a lot of people that think that it only goes into a vehicle or into a generator. That's true. Can you use it to start a fire? You can. There's a lot of people out there that will use that in a windy environment or in a wet environment to try and get it to help. But there's other reasons that you can have gas on hand, and it is one of the ones that I believe is semi overlooked, but kind of taken for granted. But this is just to kind of give you a reminder that at least keeping some on hand is probably a good idea. So we'll leave it at that, being kind of short. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Number 6, medication. Having a month's worth or so on hand is a good idea. Your doctor may not over-prescribe your medication, so keep it in a safe and accessible location, especially if it's vital to your health. Also considering storing over-the-counter meds such as ibuprofen, acetaminophen, cold, and digestive aids. Now, there's a lot of natural and herbal medications and medicinal things that you can learn about. Nature does provide a lot of natural remedies, and it's one of the skills that really deserves its own episode. I'm still learning a lot about that, so maybe I will find somebody that I can bring on that's a lot more of an expert than I'll probably ever be in it. That's something that it's very important, and I don't want to mislead anybody in that. But to do Western medicine, getting things like a pain reliever, a fever reducer, things like an Oragel or whatnot for dental relief. There's a lot of different things medically. That also kind of goes in with hygiene as well. There's a lot that kind of gets overlooked. You have to be careful, obviously, with medication. You're dealing with one's health. Too much of something, too little of something, it could be very, very damaging. So I encourage everybody to really take the time, because your health is pretty much above anything when it comes to prepping. If you are not healthy, you're not going to make it very long. You're not going to be able to help others. You're not going to be able to help your family. And it's one of the ones that you need to understand when it comes to medication, what you need, what your family needs, and you kind of need to see what you might need in the future as well. So I encourage you, this is again just a quick overview to get your wheels turning. Jot this down somewhere as kind of a thing that you need to go do a little bit more of a deeper dive with a medical professional. But with that, let's move on to the next one. First aid. Number 7 being first aid goes hand in hand with medication. Your first aid kit should not merely be a kit with band-aids and antiseptics. You should be able to treat serious injuries with the tools in your first aid kit. Make sure that your kit has Instapack, ice packs, in case you need to reduce swelling from sprains, strains, and other similar injuries. I do agree with that. I am an advocate for having multiple different first aid kits. You should have a first aid kit on you at all times or nearby. I'm an advocate for having one on you, for having one in your vehicle, for having multiple in your home, for having them in each of your bags. And you need to have it all the way from a boo-boo kit for just a normal, minor cut, paper cut, splinter, things like that. I believe that there's going to be a lot of people that make a mistake because they won't think an injury is that serious, or they don't want to waste supplies. But when something happens and, here we are, we got to pull everything out. If you get something, let's say like a splinter, if you don't get it treated and covered, you can get seriously ill, if not get some sort of infection and die. And that is not the way I want to see anybody go out, especially when you're in this community. You came here for a reason, because you want to prepare. I'm telling you, again, from my opinion, when you get some sort of injury, make sure that you have the knowledge and the supplies ready that you can take care of it. Don't be afraid to use your supplies. That is what they are there for. When you cut yourself in, an event to where, the grid's down or chaos is ensuing, use your supplies. You have to be able to live and make it. Then we can go resupply or figure out what to do for the next injury. But you can't make it that long if you didn't use your supplies now in order to get to that next one, if that makes sense. So I encourage you, we'll probably make a couple of different episodes on first aid kits and whatnot. First aid is going to be very, very important. But with that, let's go ahead and move on to one final one. Number 8, hygiene. And this goes hand in hand with the past few that we just went through. Just because you're facing a disaster doesn't mean that you have to be a slob. Cleanliness and sanitation will keep you from communicable diseases, so make sure you carry things like sanitizer, disinfectant, soap. Don't forget to pack things like wipes, toilet paper, and trash bags for good measure. And that I'm glad that they put in here, because it is a very, very important part. If you noticed in some of the ones like Hurricane Katrina, there was a lot of, death and whatnot that was, floating in that river. Not to mention, because of the high water, people were urinating and using, the bathroom in that's floating around. People were stuck on the rooftops, and they, couldn't get away from the disease and the different things that were down there. So, that's one of the ones that I wish you would have gotten yourself out of that situation before something like that would have happened. But it's one of the things that we can go through and we can learn from. Hygiene will be probably one of the biggest things that take people out in a SHTF situation. If you look through in history, when you have things like civil wars, world wars, and things like that, more often than not, you have more people get injured or die from poor hygiene or medical related things versus being shot or blown up. So hygiene is going to be very, very, very important. Make sure that you go out. I know finances can be hard for a lot of people, especially right now, but there is coupons to clip. There's different dollar stores that you can go to. Something is better than nothing. There is herbal and natural things that you can use for teeth brushing and deodorant. But make sure that you have a way that you can take care of your body, you can clean your clothes. It's going to be very, very important that you can stay healthy and clean. And we can do an episode on how to make your own laundry detergent or, a cleaning agent or whatnot. But again, brief overview, something to get you thinking. It's an extremely important topic. But for now, let's do final thoughts. All right, well, we just went through the first 8, and I'm trying to keep this as short as possible. So here shortly, I'll be releasing part 2, which will be the following 8. Now, again, this isn't a must-have. I'm not telling you to do anything. These are just topics from an article that I picked out that was well written and well thought out, that is just meant to get your gears turning up here. Something for you to think about, something for you to write down the title of each slide that was done in this video and going to be in part 2, and you can branch out from there. So when you have water, you need to do a layout. How many people do we have? How much water do we need per person per day? How much drinking water? How much, non-drinking clean water do we need? How are we going to store it? How are we going to, sanitize and make it drinkable water? Where are we going to get it from? There's a lot of things that you can break out of each topic that we just went through. So I encourage you that as you watch this, rewatch it if you need to, pause it, write these things down, so that way you can take full advantage of this. So with that, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, ring the little bell notification, so that way you'll be notified when part 2 comes out of this video. With that, guys, I'm going to shut this down by saying remain united. We're all prepping this together.